Welcome back to our top 50 countdown. This is the first time that I've been just with Emily here.
Together.
We will be together again in the top 10, all four of us. But we are going to be going through 30
through 21.
Down to 21. And I can tell you, after having looked at my list recently, it's getting good.
In fact, good ones.
It's been amazing. All the games in my top 50, I look at them and I'm like, I really like all these games. And I guess that makes sense.
Yes, you put them in a top 50 list.
But I'm surprised that there's 50 games that I feel this strongly about.
Where every time you look at it, you're like, oh yeah, we should play that one.
Right, that's the other thing. Because some of these are games that have not come into the table maybe as recently. Yeah. But I'm like, oh yeah, let's play this. And I'll go, Emily, have you played this? No. Oh, okay, we got to play this. So anyway, without further ado, we're going to start at 30 and get down to 21. Emily, take it away.
My number 30 is a game called Riverside. And Riverside is this nice little roll and write where you are taking a cruise around the Arctic and you are trying to do little activities. What I love about it, though, is that you have the dice that are shared among them. And if you have one that determines what the heat level is going to be, and the rest of them you can take without taking heat. So you're trying not to overheat your steam engine for your cruise boat. But you get to do little fun things like you're getting moose and polar bears and a whole bunch of things trying to keep your people happy. But what's great is it has this little board. So it's not just dice and a pad like most roll and writes. You actually have a shared board where your thing is moving and you can see which spaces you can go to depending on what value you have for that activity. So it really felt much more like a shared experience, where like a lot of roll and writes feel like, you're doing your own thing, I'm doing my own thing, who knows what everyone else is doing. It felt like we were doing something together, but still competitive.
Yeah, in most roll and writes, the dice are the only things connecting everyone at the table. Yeah. It is nice to see games like this, and I haven't played this one.
Oh, you gotta play it.
I will have to try it, but it's nice to see games using the roll and write mechanic as something that serves a little bit more of a game than just your everyday roll and write. My number 30 is a game that I've just recently added to the list. This was not on my top 50, not that I had one before, but it is Ginkopolis. This game, I'd heard so many things about it over the years. People would say, oh, you know what? I really think you'd like Ginkopolis. And I'm like, okay, but then I never tried it. And finally, I heard another review recently, probably just in the last couple months, and I thought, okay, I've got to try it because they gave it really good reviews.
Okay.
So I went to our local game store and picked it up and got it and the expansion. And yes, I loved it. Played it several times. But even after the first time, I knew it was going to be added to my top 50. This is a game that combines a few different things that I love. It has some engine building because you're getting a tableau of cards. And I mean a tableau of cards.
Like
and there's different categories of cards. And depending on what you do on your turn, there's one action you can take where you're exploiting, where you can then take all of the other exploit actions that you have. So basically, there's cards that you've built in your tableau that say, whenever you take the exploit action, do this. And if you have a bunch of those, you start to enjoy taking that action. Whereas someone else at the table might not have a lot of those, so they're not really headed in that direction.
Okay.
But you're all building this sort of shared city, Ginkopolis, in the middle, adding tiles to it. The other cool thing that this thing does is it's all built around these cards. So the tiles that are on the table at the beginning of the game, those are the cards that are in the deck at the beginning of the game.
Okay.
And then as more cards and tiles get added, then at the end of that round, when the deck needs to get reshuffled, you have to make sure and then go get all of the cards associated with the new tiles that have been added to the city and put them in the deck too. Okay. So there's this ever-evolving thing so that when you then play the 32 and that tile might already be out, you're able to exploit that tile now that it's out there. It's a very interesting game. It is really kind of difficult to explain, obviously, since you have no idea what I'm talking about. But I recommend anyone try it. And that is my number 30, Ginkopolis.
Nice. Well, my number 29 is one I have played quite a bit already. And I know that you actually talked about it on a Chit Chat once, that you didn't have a great experience with it.
Oh, what is this?
But mine is Spyfall.
She's right. I did not.
I love it, though. Spyfall's a great game. It's one of those games where it's like social deduction. You're trying to figure out who's the spy, and you all have a card that says a single location on it. So we might all be at the circus, right? And if David's the spy, he gets a card that instead of saying the circus says
You're the spy. Yeah.
And what you're trying to do to figure out who it is you go around the table and you're asking questions. So David might ask me, like, how long would you spend at this place? And I might say a couple hours. And then I might ask someone else at the table, like, what would you wear to this place? And they might say, a fancy gown. And I'd say,
at the circus?
At the circus. And then I'd be like, spy. I think they're the spy. Or they might be trying, but again, if you give clues that are too obvious, the spy knows where it is. And he says, I'm going to guess, is it the circus? Or if you give clues that are too vague, people are like, what? At the circus?
See, and you've already explained the game better than it was explained to me when I had my not so great experience. So I would be willing to give this another try. Because
you should. It's so much fun.
I would pin my experience mostly on my stupidity and not really being able to wrap my head around what I was supposed to be doing. But I'll blame the teach a little bit.
Well, and I really like this one too because it's a social deduction game, but you have this basis of questions. So people start coming up with the most random questions like, what Beatles song would remind you of this place? And they're like, what?
Yeah, because then you've got everyone else at the table who's also at the circus going, I'm not sure if you're the spy or not with that question. Like, what kind of question is that?
Yeah.
Because you're challenging them to think, is there a Beatles song that has to do with the circus?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now I kind of want to play it. That sounds interesting. My number 29 is a roll and write as well.
Ooh.
But this one is sort of that good old-fashioned roll and write where just the dice are connecting you. And in fact, it's a game that I've played mostly with nobody except for myself. And that's
really? You played it solo?
Gone Sean Clever.
Oh, okay.
And I played it solo because there's an app. And I've played the heck out of it. This is it's sort of the purest of roll and writes in my opinion in terms of like what you're doing. It's very abstract. There's no theme. There's no riverboat. There's no Arctic tour. You're rolling dice and using them. This is sort of in my opinion, the really quintessential pure roll and write where you're filling in different sections and really trying to maximize your score.
Combo-tastic.
It is. Oh boy, is it combo-tastic.
It's the combo of combos.
And it relies on the combos to do well. Like if you're not getting combos in the game, you're not winning the game. And interestingly enough, I've played this so much more on the app that I have kind of forgotten the experience of what it's like to play with other players. Because when you're playing the app, you're really just trying to just get a better score than you got the last time. So I know what that score is.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to get this to the table again and see what scores are with a collection of people. Because it does play differently that way than when you're just playing on the app.
I've never played the app. I've only played with people. And I enjoyed that experience, though.
It's addictive. With the last couple trips I've taken on a plane, Alicia and I both had it. And that's literally all we were doing on the plane is playing Gods. So that is my 29.
Well, my number 28 is a newer game. This is one that we played recently, actually, and that's Decorum.
Oh, wow. It made the list.
It made the list. I really enjoy deduction games.
At 2 players.
At 2 players, yes. I want to play it at 4 again with one not so hard. When we played this game, you are building a house together. It's the passive-aggressive game of cohabitation.
You love saying that.
I love saying that because it's so true. Like I love when a game has a tagline that is actually what it is about.
It is. That is hardcore legit with this game.
Yeah, so you're trying to build this house together, and I will do something to a room, and then David will comment on whether
I don't like that. Why would you put a lamp in the kitchen? In fact, I've just said too much. I can't really say all that. You just kind of have to say, no, I don't like that.
And then he'll do something, and I'll comment and say, great choice, great choice. And then we'll just keep going back and forth until both of the conditions on both of our private cards are met. So it's all about deduction, trying to figure out what goes where, what his clue could be, what my clues are. We played it at 4, and we thought we were hot stuff. And we were like,
not.
We were like, we're so good at this game, we can pick a hard one. And we went for like 4 stars the first time.
It was bonkers difficult for the 4 of us.
Hard.
It was, in fact, at the end, I said, Emily, you just take all 4 of the cards and see if you can.
And we did. Me and Alicia were like, this would have to go here, this would have to go there, which was honestly a fun puzzle too.
Yeah.
Not the actual game, but still. And then when we finally got it, we were like, wow, that was tough. I don't know how we would have done it.
So if that speaks to the kind of challenge that it offers, that was a puzzle in and of itself. Imagine 4 people each having some of the information and not being able to share it.
No, yeah.
It gets tricky. And it's fun. You really have to lean into that theme because you can what you're doing on your turn is she might have put a lamp in that she wants somewhere. And if on my turn I remove that lamp, the players are like, what are you doing?
Excuse me, sir.
I wanted that lamp there. But yeah, that is a lot of fun. So my number 28. This is a bigger game. This is a Euro game. This is sort of like my wheelhouse of games and it's sort of the kind of games we play on the channel a lot. It is Underwater Cities.
Oh, I like Underwater Cities.
From Vladimir Suhi and Delicious Games, and I think published here by Rio Grande. But Underwater Cities, not my favorite Suhi, spoiler alert.
Ooh.
But this is a worker placement game that has a really cool gimmick, and I mean that in the most loving way. You play cards when you're placing your workers. And when you go to a place, there's like 3 different sides of the board that have 3 different colors associated with them. And when you go to one of the locations in, say, to the red area, if you play a red card along with it, you get to synergize there and do the action on the card. You want to do that as much as possible. So it adds that much more thinkiness to those decisions. And it's really interesting because if you're like me, and like most players, you don't ever want to take an action that doesn't do that. You absolutely want to do that, but you are drawing cards, and you can get a lot of cards in your hand, but you can only keep very few cards in your hand, so it's very limited, and you're going to find situations where you're like, well, I got to do this, but I don't have an orange card. The other thing about this game, you're also building this really cool network of an underwater city with these cool domes. The components are nice. Especially if you've gotten the expansion that has sort of the upgraded components and the dual-layer player boards. It is a really nice game, really fun game. You're also building some tableaus with some of your cards a little bit. But the combination of the card play and the worker placement is really good. And that worker placement, I'll tell you that I've said this about a lot of worker placement games. That moment where you're sitting there and it's not your turn and you're like, no one take that action. Do not take that action.
That's the action I'm taking.
No other worker placement game that I've experienced is as tense when it comes to that because inevitably
someone takes it.
Almost every single time someone takes the action. They're very sought after, and some of the actions are somewhat vital. Like you always have to kind of go back to some of them, and it's really about trying to get out of sync with people so you're not trampling over each other and taking those actions at the same time. But Underwater Cities, that is my 28.
A good number 28.
It is a good number.
You're going to like my 27, though, I have a feeling, too.
Oh, really?
My number 27 is Orleans.
Oh, I am going to like that.
And I know you like it, so I'm sure it's going to come up somewhere in your list.
I don't know that it's on the list. It's on the list.
Okay. I'm sure it'll come up on David's. But this is a bag builder game, and what I really enjoy about it is the bag building because you're able to put scholars and monks and other people in your bag, take them out on your turn, and push them around your player board to see what actions you want to do. I always make the mistake, though, in this, where I start grabbing people because it's easier to grab them, and then I have, like, a whole bunch of, like, scholars and nothing else. And I'm like, oh, shoot.
Those aren't bad ones to have, though.
They're not, but it's still, like, some of the actions you want to take, then you're trying to, like, move around the board, move around across rivers or across roads, and I don't have, like, the diversity that I need to. So I really enjoy this game because it forces me to kind of think in a different way and be like, no, you're really trying to... It is a deck builder, but it's in a bag. It's in a bag builder. So, like, really think about what you have, not just as, like, bonus resources. They are your resources. Like, you need to diversify. You need to be getting what you need to take the actions you want. And you are foregoing some other things because you just don't have enough time to do everything as well as you want to do it.
Yeah, plus it has some really good tiles that you can collect as you're playing to sort of give your game a signature compared to everyone else's. Because there are tiles that you can acquire that really change up what you can do, even giving you additional spaces that no one else has that you can go to and utilize, and it gives you that flexibility. But I would agree, I make the same mistake. Particularly with scholars, honestly, I get a bunch of the gray guys because I like that route to getting the wilds and stuff like that. And you have to get the grays to go up the main track at the bottom. But then I always find myself without the knights.
The knights especially.
The knights.
I'm like, why didn't I never get any knights?
And you're always reminded when you're about a third or 2/3 through the game and other players are like cooking around the map.
Oh, they're doing everything around the map. They have all these places and I'm like,
I haven't moved.
I'm not getting any goods here.
No, Orleans is a great game, and it's probably one of the first, if not the first bag builder I remember playing. It's a great game. All right, so we're down to my number 27. This is, I don't know, I might misspeak here, maybe the very newest game that I've added to this list. Because I played it very, very recently. We've talked about it on Chit Chat.
More recent than Gigapolis.
More recent than Gigapolis. I had not tried Nidavellir until recently.
Oh.
And I can tell you this. I've played it several times since my first try, but it was absolutely after the first time I played this, I was like, guaranteed this is somewhere in my top 50.
Yeah.
This is such an utterly playable game with all sorts of people, and it strikes me as the kind of game that a family could play. And it could be kind of become the game that they play all the time when they get together. It's this really cool bidding game, and I'm not even a giant fan. If someone says, I've got a bidding game...
Yeah, I'm already out.
I know you're not a big fan either, and I generally am that way too. But this game, you're building these sort of like rows and rows of these dwarf cards of different colors. They're all going to score very differently. So there's these taverns that have the dwarves out, and you are putting coins on each of the... You have a board that has those taverns on them. So you put coins, and everyone starts with the same coins. But there's also this cool big tray display of all these better coins that go from low value all the way up to, I think, 25.
Oh, Jesus.
Right, and you can effectively... And you only have 0 to 5 at first.
Okay.
And you're bidding these coins, and you basically flip over your coins all at the same time and see who wins that tavern. And all that does is gives a person the first pick of the dwarves in that tavern. You're always going to get a dwarf from the tavern.
Oh, thank God.
But you're just not going to get your first pick. So when you organize your coins and you're looking out there, you're like, okay, well, I definitely want to win that tavern because I want that guy. So everyone's kind of like going up there. And then all the while, you're collecting all these different cards. And every time you get a full row, you're able to take a card from this, like a very unique card from this other display. I'm almost telling you everything you need to know about the game. This is why it entered my top 50 so quickly. It is a really fun game, and I'm going to get you to play it. Guarantee. I can't imagine you won't like it. It is so, and it's so fast.
So what I've heard about it is that it's a auction bidding game, and that it's quick and it's a lot of fun. Everyone loves this game, but like the bidding for me is where I'm like, I'm quite bad at bidding games.
It's probably better to say it's a drafting game.
Okay, I like drafting.
Where there's some bidding related to your order in the draft.
Okay.
That's maybe a better way to describe it. Because it isn't, you are bidding, but it's hard to call it a bidding game. But it is what you're doing. But it is mostly because you're trying to draft these cards and build a big display.
Sure.
It just happens to have bidding as a mechanic.
Okay.
So... that is my 27, Nidavellir.
Nice. My number 26 is going to be a Vital Lacerda game. And
that
is
surprise.
On Mars.
Okay.
Yeah.
Surprised this isn't a little higher for you.
I think this is my lowest Lacerda that
Lacerda?
I have on my list. I do have quite a few on the list because I really enjoy his designs.
Yes.
But On Mars for me, the reason it's the lowest is probably because it is very complicated. It is like, I think it's the heaviest one
is it?
That he has. But it is very complex because you have what you're doing on Mars, thus the title. You're actually building out like places for your robots to go, and you're building out tiles. And then you can also do stuff off planet though. And you can go off the planet and be doing stuff out in space, and then come back onto the planet and do stuff on the planet. And there are specific worker placement spots that you can take when you are off planet.
Oh, that's
cool. And specific
cool.
things you can do when you are on planet. And so you have to really be timing what you're doing when. So you're thinking like, okay, next round I want to be buying these cards. Oh, but to do that, I have to be on planet. So I'm going to have to position myself to move back onto planet so that I can do these moves at this time. So much complexity around that, around timing of when you're doing actions, around what can you do while you're in the spot where maybe you didn't want to be, and then how you can link up all these cards together with what you're building on Mars, with what you're trying to do off planet. It's just a crazy amount of stuff going on, but it is really enjoyable when you build everything up and you're like, oh, look at all this stuff I did. And when you start getting those timings right, where you're like, perfect, I'm going to do this on planet, and then I'm going to move over there and do these 3 things. Then I'm going to move back and do these 3 things.
I wish all of that didn't melt my brain as much as it does. Like, because when you're describing it, it sounds very fun. In fact, that layered approach to the placement in terms of off-planet and on-planet reminds me a little bit. Tell me if I'm wrong here. You know have you played Anachrony?
I have not.
Oh, well, it has kind of a certain thing where there's worker placement spots you can go to in one circumstance, and then there's different worker placement spots you can go to
I think I'd
in a
really
different
like
circumstance. That's what you were describing reminded me of that. But I just know it would melt my brain.
It is a little bit of a brain burner, but if you like space games, like Ryan loves space games.
That's not going to do it for me. That's not going to. Don't trick me into playing a heavy Lacerda by luring me with space.
With Mars.
Okay, my number 26 is slightly lighter than that game.
Just slightly?
Slightly. It's called Codenames. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. Codenames, I'm sure everyone who's watching this knows what Codenames is, so I won't take a lot of time. But Codenames is one of those games, when I first played it, just like a lot of people, it's one of those games, and a few of these come along every once in a while, where you play it and you're like, how did no one ever make this game before?
Yeah.
Like, it's brilliant, and it's simple. And there's probably a time where someone played Codenames, and then they kind of got out of playing Codenames, and they don't play it anymore. And I've been on that journey as well. But then I've played it again. I've played it with family members who maybe hadn't played it, or played it online. There's a great online implementation.
Yes, there's a great version of it online.
And we've been actually on some streamed and broadcast plays of that. And every time we do it, I'm like, man, this is a good game.
Yeah.
Codenames is just undeniably good, and it's so fun to play, particularly when you're playing with people on your team. You know, when I've played with Alicia and she's on my team, it's one of those games where, like,
inside jokes.
Okay, we know each other. So
yeah.
let's get this. It is one of those games where you might screw up and, you elicit the, what were you thinking?
Oh, so many what were you thinking moments. There are so many times where I say a word and I'm like, this is a huge stretch. And I like put it out there, and afterwards they're like, how, Emily?
Yeah.
How? And I was like, water, because like the rain's down in Africa. So water was Africa. You get it. They're like, no.
Yeah, it is fun, the sort of dot-to-dot logic that you use, especially when you say, water 7. Like you're trying to get someone to guess a ton of clues. Mm-hmm. Anyway, Codenames Duet, I will lump that in there with it if you haven't played that. Sure. It's really, really good cooperative version of Codenames for just two people.
Yeah, so. If you ever want to play it and you're like, oh, but we don't have a big group, Duet is great.
Plus, it's great practice. It's just great practice for Codenames, just to play Duet.
Team building with two people.
Exactly.
So we are on number 25?
We are number 25.
Number 25 for me is going to be another Lacerda, and that is the Gallerist.
It's less heavy than On Mars?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it is.
I think so. Because you don't have two places. You're only in one place. And this one, honestly, seems very simple. Like, in a teach of it, there's only 4 spaces you can go. Just 4 spaces.
You're lying to me, I know. It's going to get more complicated.
There's only 4 spaces. And in each space, there's only 2 things you could do. That's it. 8 things you could do all game.
Really?
And then a few executive actions you can take. Just a few executive actions that you can take.
Executive actions.
But it's a gorgeous game. So you are a gallerist and you are buying paintings, and then you're trying to sell them back at a higher price, and you are kind of investing in different artists, and you're investing in their fame to try to make their paintings more valuable. So the theme I thought was really cool.
Theme is cool.
But the way that the different interactions, again, like you're really only doing 8 things, but the way those 8 things move with each other, that you have to be doing them just at the right times in accordance to what everybody else is doing. There's a lot of like economy in this one, right? Where when something's more valuable is when you want to sell it, but then its value could be going higher if you just wait a little longer, but also you really need money. You really need the money to start getting more stuff. I love that part of this one, of the economy. I'm not super great at games where the economy is really tight, because I feel like I am very much a curmudgeon with my resources. I'm always like, I need more money. I don't want to spend it.
That's like me too. They'll play games where I have all this money, and at the end of the game, it's not worth anything in this game. Exactly. And I'm like, well, I've not played efficiently. Like, I should have been spending this money on something.
But you also have this mechanic where when you place your pawn there to take the action, there's another pawn that you're booting out, and they also get to follow and take part of that action as well. So it's kind of a follow mechanic as well, which I really enjoy in games. And you're also so when you're placing something, you're thinking like, am I going to get to do this action now? And am I prepared to take it again if somebody goes there so that I get to follow? So I really enjoy.
That doesn't sound as brain burnery.
It's definitely not. It's definitely not. But you gotta be willing to flow with what the economy is doing, with what's happening in the game, and be aware of like how everything is interconnected.
Well, I'd be willing to play it, but I guarantee you I will play poorly.
That's fine.
For you, it is. So my number 25 is also a relatively new game. In fact, it's just delivered this year in 2022.
Okay.
But we got the chance to play it a couple years ago when this ran the campaign on Kickstarter. This is Dead Reckoning from AEG and John D. Clare. This is, and I did a review of it back then because I played it so much because I'd fallen in love with it.
I've heard you talk a lot about this game.
I love this game. I really want to get you to try this game. I don't know if it's typically your kind of game, but I really want to see what you think of it. This is a card crafting game. So if you've ever played any of John D. Clare's games like Mystic Vale, Edge of Darkness, I liked all of those, but nothing like I like this one. This one is that mechanic and that whole concept perfected, in my opinion. And the other thing about how you're building these decks and building those cards, it's a pirate game and it's incredibly, incredibly thematic. You have this whole open board of tiles that are face down that is the open sea, and you're going out to these places to not only discover them, but that's where the cards are that you're adding.
Okay.
So it's a deck builder that has sort of a geography to it, to where like, oh, that card's really good, but I have to travel there to get it. And first of all, you have to travel there to sort of unveil it. And there's powered cards. You know, there's the further you get out away from where you start, the juicier the cards are.
Of course.
And there's so much going on in this game. It is a bit of a race game. There's like a few things that you have to kind of like complete. And once those things have been completed, it's going to trigger the end game. But man, it is one of absolutely the most thematic games I've ever played. And it does so many fun Euro-y things, but that deck building is great. And like every John D. Clare game, or just about every John D. Clare game I've ever played, it keeps the players, it's crafted in such a way it keeps the players really engaged. And in this one, when it's not your turn, the rules literally say you get to do a thing where you're upgrading one of the cards in your hand after your turn is over. So you're basically sitting there at, now you're not paying attention so much to what else is going on at the table.
So you're like, wait, what just happened?
Because you're sitting there looking at your cards, but it gives you that sort of task to do between your turns.
So you're not just doing nothing.
And it doesn't, it makes the downtime feel like nothing. Because you're
cool.
sitting there like, oh, what one do I want to upgrade? Because you get to upgrade a card after every single turn.
I really appreciate that, when you can play something 4-player and not feel like, okay, what's going on?
Oh, yeah. Your turn is over and it's over. It's really just begun. Like, there's times where you finish your turn and you're like, okay, what card do I get to upgrade now?
Yes.
It's really, I can't recommend this game enough.
Nice. Well, my number 24 is one that you've actually already mentioned in this segment.
Dead Reckoning?
No. It's Underwater Cities.
Oh, okay.
So you know a little bit about how the game is played, but what I really enjoyed about it was that it's so tight, right? Like what David was saying about you don't want someone to take your spot, but you're also really trying to say like, how can I make the most of what I can do with these actions, with these cards, and with this route building in the middle? Like, I'm not usually a big person for like the kind of settlement aspect of a game where like I'm pushing things out. But with this one, I felt like there was so much to combo with, right? Like when I place, what type of dome am I placing? Where am I placing it? How is that going to combo with the cards and the effects I already have? How is that going to combo with the things that I'm trying to do out here? And it really made me feel like I could be very efficient and feel very proud of my achievements.
Oh, yeah. The pride, I mean, it's you take pride, but that player board you have in front of you is what really gives you all your production between rounds.
Yes.
And that's one of the other things about the game is that production. If you've done something well here, when it comes production time, you're like
bam, bam,
I
bam.
get 8 of these, I get 5 of, you're just collecting all this stuff. It is one of those games where you do a lot of stuff during a round, and then you get a lot of resources, and those are the resources you have for the next round to get you through that next round, which is a really interesting, fun thing.
And it did have a theme. Like, if I love when a Euro has a good theme that's not just agriculture or history.
There was kelp. You were agriculture.
Yes, there was kelp. But we were underwater. We could do underwater things.
That's true. So my next game, I have games all over the place. I've got some heavy. I've got some medium. Well, not too many heavy, but I've got some medium weight games. And I've got some lighter games. This is another light game. And this is probably, since Codenames, one of the games that came on the scene.
Okay.
That everyone was like, oh my God, this is the simplest concept.
I feel like
it's brilliant.
What it is.
Do you know?
I think I do.
Just One.
Yep, that was it.
Yeah, Just One came out 2 or 3 years ago now, was when we first played it. And the year it came out, it took the world by storm. And it's such a brilliant game in that you're putting down those clues and thinking, oh, what clue can I give that no one else is going to give? And
but that's not too weird that people are like, what?
Yeah, I'm the guy that does the weird ones all the time. I do, and I'm like, no, I have the logic in my head. And even particularly when it's someone who I know, oh, you should get this. But the tricky thing about just one is like, those outliers can sometimes seal the deal and make you win the round, or they can be the one word that makes the person go, okay, huh?
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, now I don't know. And to watch the player who's trying to guess their word go through all of the like machinations in their mind of like, and at the first they might think, you might go, oh, they have it, and then they get themselves off track, and you're like, no.
It's like a slot machine. Like you're watching them go through all these different choices and being like, boom, boom, oh no.
Yeah, simple game, and I'm sure you've all played it, but just one is absolutely got a spot on my list.
Definitely. My number 23 is Unfair. So this is a game.
Oh, yeah, you like Unfair.
I do like Unfair. I do like Unfair quite a bit. And I did a review on Funfair versus Unfair.
Yeah.
Unfair is the one that I personally enjoy more, which might tell you a little bit about how I am as a gamer and if you want to play with me or not.
It also suggests that Funfair is not going to be on your list any further than this.
It is not. Yeah. It is not. But Unfair did make it. And even though it is a bit of take that, I mean, the game is literally called Unfair. You're building a amusement park, and you get to have the enjoyable experience of actually literally building your park.
Yeah.
Like you are building rides, you are building attractions, you are building things on top of your rides, you're upgrading stuff. I love the satisfying feeling of like when I'm done with this game being like, look at this thing I've built. Look at all these cool things I've done. Plus, like during the game, it's very easy to remember, like you only have 3 actions around, you're doing events. The reason I like it better than Funfair, and I've talked about this in the review, is that it just has a lot more weight to it. There's a lot more you're doing in it. Mm-hmm. And you can play with one of the mods, which is World Peace, so that you don't have any of that.
Yeah, so it's not super
You don't have to, but you also could lean into it if you have a group that enjoys that type of play as well.
Yeah, it's nice that they give you the option to take that out.
Yeah.
Because
there's so many different expansions now. They've just added a few more, and you can add in all these different decks. You can really customize your experience. Like, I love how they really drove into the theme and just done so many different things with it.
That's cool.
My most fun thematic experience.
So my number 23 is a game called My City. Now, this was among one of my top 10 games the year it came out, and it's a fairly simple, straightforward game. And I played it with Alicia all the way through. This is the only Legacy game she's ever played, I believe.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. And in this game, it's a tile laying game. And the first time have you played it?
I've not still.
The first time you play it, the first session, it's so simple. It's almost too simple. Okay. You know, as gamers, enthusiast gamers, you're like, that was pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Because you're flipping over these cards and it shows you, okay, take this tile and add it to your board. So you do that. And that's what you're doing, and people start doing it differently. But as you do this, things start to change. You're able to score differently. And then at the end of each session, whoever scores the most gets a little something. The other person doesn't.
Okay.
And then as you proceed through this, I can't remember how many different sessions there were, but they were basically these chapters. And even starting with the very second one, it introduced a new rule. Mm-hmm. And by the mid-game, and certainly by the end, there's whole new things that are on your board that you're doing. Like you're not building mines at the beginning, but at the end you're like, trying to get gold and like.
Oh, interesting.
Oh yeah, it totally changes like how you're scoring the game.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, I have to completely rethink. You can't get into this groove of like, well, this is just how I'm going to play it every time. Mm-hmm. And it was a blast. Now I will say it probably doesn't have the most replayability.
I was going to say it's hard to have a Legacy game in your top 50.
It didn't for us have a lot of replayability. With that said, you can then just play. The other side of the board is just kind of you can play the
Sandbox.
game.
Okay.
And it includes, I think, some more of the rules than what you would get at the very beginning. But that experience of having played through that, one of my best gaming experiences, and that's kind of how I looked at some of the games on my top 10 or my top 50 was, even though I don't get to the table anymore,
sure,
it was going to be a memory I have of playing a game that I won't forget.
Well, and that's really nice when you can have like an experience with someone you love and really just remember all the good times you had with it. And like, it seems like it was a considerable amount of time too. It wasn't just like a couple hours.
We played, each session is just like 15 minutes maybe,
nice.
or maybe up to 20. And then the further you get, they start to take a little bit longer. But each session is very short, and that's the nice thing is you could sit down and go a little further and not commit more than 20 minutes, half an hour. But what was hard to do is like you'd play one, you're like, oh, let's play the next one. Or you'd play one and you'd open the envelope and go, oh, these new rules are cool. So then you'd want to play that and you'd end up playing another 3 sessions. Alicia and I played it over the course of, I think, 2 or 3 weekends.
Okay.
So
nice.
we played a little bit and then a little bit more, and then I think we finished it off. But that was a great, and it was a fair amount of time. We spent, probably 2 to 3 hours each time.
Yeah.
It was really, really good experience. So My City, I highly recommend it. And I think they have a new one called My Islands coming out.
Oh, that's exciting.
Either this year or next here in the States, which I'm really excited to check out.
Nice. Well, my next game is not quite as short of a game when you sit down to play it, but it is one I have talked about before that I do really enjoy, and that is Corrosion.
Oh, yeah, that is not as short.
No, it's not. And it is a little bit more complicated. But I really enjoy Corrosion. You're basically in charge of a little factory, and you're going to be playing cards from your hand into the different time zones of how much it's going to cost to do the action. It has a lot of puzzly aspects to it.
It does have that.
Where you're trying to build stuff into your factory before it rusts and goes bad, and so that you can use all the effects that it has on it and really kind of like abuse the system, trying to get as much done as possible. It's very much an efficiency puzzle, and it is a little bit long, especially at 4 and especially with new players. But I really enjoy just trying to figure out how everything goes together and how I can make this do the most, but also I'm running out of cards. I need to take those back, but I don't really want to take things back because things are going to rust off my board.
When you say sentences like that, that's what gaming is all about.
I know.
Like, I want to do this, but I could do this or this. Decisions. I also think, by the way, truth be told, I think Emily likes it because she has a card in the game.
I do have a card in the game.
I'm teasing her, but she does it. One of our promos for our Kickstarter, she was on a card for Corrosion, which is really cool. So my number 22, we're down to 22.
22, getting there.
My number 22 is an abstract game that has a fair amount of theme applied to it.
I'm interested.
The game's called Santorini. Have you played it?
I have not played Santorini.
Oh, we're definitely going to play Santorini. Santorini is, you can play it with more than 2, but it is effectively a 2-player game that started out as a very abstract game, and then Roxley took it and applied this whole Santorini to it. I mean, it was called, I don't know if it was called that originally, but they applied that theme to it, and you build these beautiful buildings. But it's a simple game where you have a couple pieces, pawns that you're moving around, each player. And on your turn, you just do a simple thing. You're going to move and build. And
I can handle
what you're trying to do is to get onto the top of the 3rd level of a building. So what happens is move, build, and then you've got some stuff. And when you move, I'm going to move up a level. Mm-hmm. And then you have to move up. You can't jump really high.
Sure.
And then someone might move up also, but then they build the blue cap on top of the building. And if you know Santorini, that's what the buildings look like there.
Gotcha.
And now you can't win. You can't get up on top of that building. So you're constantly trying to win, trying to keep your opponent from winning. I haven't gotten to the best part. That's the base game. The way this game is meant to be played is there's all these god cards. So you're playing as a different god each time. And you have wildly different power. Mm-hmm. So much so that it completely changes the win conditions.
Oh, wow.
You can always win by getting onto the top of a 3rd story building. But then I might play as a character that says, oh, I can win if I jump off of a 2-story building and hit ground. So what then that makes
That's completely different.
Right. And it's completely different. So then you have to be aware of my power such that you're like, wait a minute. All you have to do is jump off of a building to the ground and you win. So then you're running around building stuff underneath me. It is, and that's the way you have to play it. The way we play it is we'll play around, and it's a very quick game. So you play it and you each have a god, and then you just reset and you get a new god. Uh-huh. And the thing is, you're like, oh, wow, this is a totally different game than we just played. It's just wildly different. I can't recommend Santorini enough.
I think I would like it. My sister and I played a lot of Domination growing up, which is similar, right? You're building stacks. You're trying to make sure your stacks are all the top. And I really loved the aspect of kind of almost trying to trick your opponents into letting you get the top slots.
Oh my gosh, you're going to love this game.
Yeah, I think I'm going to like it a lot.
You should try it for sure.
Well, that brings us to my last game for this segment, which is 21 called Just One.
Oh, wow.
I know.
Right there in the
Everyone
same place.
Everyone loves this game.
Two overlaps, huh? Underwater Cities and
Just One. Must be the same person.
Wow, exactly.
No, but Just One is a great game, and what I love most about it is that there's always memorable moments that come out of it. You always have something that where someone's like, remember when you said that? Remember when you did this? And it really builds like a community together because you're trying to say things that are different, but also similar enough so that someone can actually get this clue.
Yeah.
And you're like, especially if you have someone who's trying to guess, who's kind of narrating aloud what they're thinking, you kind of start to see like, oh shoot, I went a little off the rails there. My bad. I was like, they were really gonna get it, but then they looked at my clue and said, huh? What does that mean?
The most memorable moments for me in that game are, and this doesn't happen too often, but it has happened, when I'm sitting there with my eyes closed because I'm the one who's gonna guess, and everyone's looking at each other words, and then I look up and there's one word left.
Yeah.
One word, and you're sitting there like, you all wrote the same thing?
Well, it's either that or it's the time when nobody writes the most obvious thing because they're like, somebody's already written this. And then all the clues you get are so strange that you're like, what? Why didn't anybody say like Teddy for bear? Like, and you're like, well, I always thought someone else was going to say it. Instead you got like Arctic or something. You're like, what?
But that failure is fun. And that's, again, a good game design is one where failure is fun, and Just One does a really good job of that.
So simple to teach, and it's great.
Yeah. So My 21, this is another pretty new game.
Okay.
But it is absolutely the best game of its kind.
I was going to say, it's not the best game. We're not at one yet, David.
But this is the best hidden movement game that I've ever played. And this is Mind Management.
Yep.
First of all, it is a gorgeous game. No matter what version you have, it is an absolutely gorgeous game. And it is a really cool theme. This is the first game that's gotten me to play the game and then explore the subject matter.
Did you really?
Oh, yeah. I have the graphic novel. I read the whole thing. Yeah. And it's a very, if you like Lost and things like that, of that ilk, it is, or Inception.
Okay.
Those kind of mind-bending, weird stories is Mind Management. But the game is hidden movement, and it's done, and this is the perfect thing about hidden movement. If you can make a hidden movement game that you can play quickly, and then you can reset and give another player at the table the opportunity to be the person hiding.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Or potentially not in this case, because one of the cool things that this game does is after you play it, if you want to play for a while and play a few sessions, depending on who won or lost, the person hiding or the rest of the team at the table, you get to open up the stuff and open up boxes that kind of tilt the favor in one way or the other, but also add completely new rules to the game. And mechanics that are like, and this is another one of those games, kind of like My City, where you're looking in one of those boxes and you're like, oh, what? This is crazy. You get to do what now?
Yeah.
Like, and it really changes the rules up to where you're like, oh, well, that's going to be way harder for us to win now. Really, really cool game. I'm going to mention an old one. Clue, the Great Museum Caper. Almost made my top 50, but that was in my opinion the best hidden movement game prior to this, because it's an old Parker Brothers game.
Wow.
I mean, it's based on Clue.
Wow.
But you're running around a museum stealing artwork as the person hiding, and everyone else is trying to catch you.
Yeah.
It's the last game that was like that was super fast to play. You could literally play with 4 people, and in a evening, a short evening, everyone could get the opportunity to be the person hiding.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah, and which in most hidden movement games just don't allow that.
No,
most hidden movement games,
everything, know how to do it,
and it takes like 2 plus 3 hours.
Yeah,
and then
you can't get anything wrong, otherwise you ruin the entire game.
And then no one wants to play after 2 to 3 hours.
Exactly.
No one's like, no, I hated it. I didn't find you.
Yeah,
but that's not Mind Management. It's really the best hidden movement game there is out there. So if you're into that, check it out for sure.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the end of this segment. So we've got more segments coming up, and like we said, we're going to culminate into our top 10
I'm excited for it. These games were good, and so I'm just ready to go to the next ones, because they just keep getting better and better as we keep going.
Yeah, it really is interesting to see how many great games are on our list.
I know, and how many we have to play still.
Yes, that's true too. When we've paired off like this, I'm like, what, you haven't played this?
I know.
Okay, we're playing this for sure.
Some of these I know you own, and I'm like, we could play right now.
Exactly. So anyway, that was our list. That was this segment. If you have any questions about any of the titles we had in there, or if you think, what are you talking about? That is not the best hidden movement game. You know, come at us. Come at us in the comments, and we will fight you. No, make sure and tell us what you think of our list down in the comments below. Tell us what you think your 30 to 21 is if you happen to have a top 50. And we'll interact with you down there and tell you you're wrong. Or tell you you're right, probably.
Spot on.
Anyway, until next time, though, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.